So many times in life, we are motivated by, inspired, and even called to do work based on our own life experience. That is true of my guest today, Angela Kennecke. She has worked as an award-winning journalist and anchor for many years. She has been in the business of storytelling, not realizing that that work would somehow prepare her for the stories she would later tell, including her own. Angela is the founder of Emily's Hope, named for her daughter, who just 5 years ago died from fentanyl poisoning at the age of 21. Among other programs, Emily's Hope educates students as young as kindergarten about the harmful effects of drugs on their bodies. Realizing that because of the increase in fentanyl deaths, some young people don't get the opportunity to recover from using drugs. She is a warrior among warriors, fighting the great big fight against fentanyl that someday, somehow, must be won. Thank you for being here, Angela. It's just a pleasure to have you here. And I know your story is a difficult one to share, but I admire and respect your ability to do it.
Thank you. I always say it. 35 years of working as a journalist in TV broadcasting prepared me for this in a strange sort of way. I was always telling other people's stories, but I also have the ability to kind of compartmentalize things in a way, as every reporter has, because I always say we see the worst of the worst, or we just cover people's tragedies, right? And I did that for so many decades, but yet we have to go on and talk about it. So I think I had this weird training that somehow prepared me for this, that I'm able to do it. Not everybody's able to do it. Not everybody should do it. But because I'm able, I just feel I must.
That's one of the things that I share too, just in my own story, is I'm always willing to lend it if it helps somebody else better live their own. It's not an easy job to share tragedy, but you're just trying to find some kind of balance between, which it's impossible with the loss of a child or husband or anyone, the balance between what you've lost and what can be gained from that, what other people can learn from that experience. So I have a lot of respect for people who are able to do it in the way that you are.
Well, I had asked, Lisa, so many people over the years to talk to me after the worst things had happened to them, or they were facing death. I mean, just so many times I had asked people to do interviews with me for the news, right?
Right.
So I felt like I owed it to people. How could I not?
Sure.
How could I ask all these people to talk to me and then I don't talk about my own personal story? And you know what? Every single one of those people told me. They told their stories. They said yes to the interview because they wanted to help someone else. And I get that.
I believe in the power of storytelling. I think that mine's a little the opposite. I had the tragedy and then I started sharing other people's stories, and it kind of helped me start to heal my own story. Just less focused on this and more focused on them. And so you had all this experience coming up to it. And, you're right. Not everyone will stand on a stage or do these types of shows and share their story, but living out our lives is sharing our story, right? Living out our lives and trying to be an example of the things that we want to change, we want to impact based on our own personal experience. So let's get started then. I want to talk about Emily, obviously, but I want you to share in your words what happened to your daughter and what brought about the work that you do now.
So Emily was my oldest child. I have 4 kids. Always will have 4 kids. I was just in love with her. Of course, when you have a child, you're a mom, right? So you know that feeling of overwhelming love that you have really for all your children. But after that first one, it's just like, wow. I really realized after she was born, the reason I was on this planet. I felt like I knew my purpose, right? I was here to serve her. I think in many ways, I'm serving her through this charity as well.
Absolutely.
She was a wonderful kid. She was very intelligent. She was gifted academically, gifted athletically. She was beautiful. So she had everything going for her. Upper, middle-class family, all the opportunities, all the camps, all the experiences, all the classes, everything she wanted to do, everything she wanted to experience. And it seemed, looking back on it now, she really wanted to experience it all I'm not saying she had any way of knowing that her life would be cut short, but she was just one of these kids that just wanted to grab onto the whole world, and do so much.
I was
And
reading all the things that you shared about her accolades and the things that she's done over the years on your website, and the little picture of her in the raincoat, and just
yeah.
the things along the way. As parents, we have those pictures, we have those memories, and we don't know at that time. You couldn't have known what was to come, but she was building a life, and a really good life. So really, it's part of the thing that I was seeing when I was reading that is, wow, this could happen to anyone.
Oh, it could.
Anyone.
It definitely could. And it is. It is happening to all kinds of people, especially young people and from all walks of life. So no one is immune from this horrible scourge on our nation of fentanyl. And yeah, well, things had started to change a little bit with Emily. In high school, she started rebelling. I would say that I wasn't prepared as a parent because it's my first kid. And none of my other kids rebelled in the same way at all. So I think her rebellion was a little bit unusual, but she had some personality factors that lended toward that. She also had some genetic factors that lended toward addiction or substance use disorder. And really, she was a risk taker, but things like she had started to rebel in high school. And then there was a boy that she fell in love with when she was 16 that she was actually with until 3 weeks before her death. And it turned out he was dealing drugs in her high school. And after her death, I found out that they were both addicted to a heavier drug than I could ever have imagined. But I was unsuccessful in being able to deter that or being able to change that course, no matter what I tried. And I had tried a lot. When she started rebelling, I took her to counselors. I had found out she was smoking weed and taking Xanax, which isn't that unusual, among teenagers. And I had even invoked the law at one point. She'd been to outpatient counseling and got kicked out. But then after she turned 18 and was out of my house, I didn't have the control, that you have as a parent when they're under 18. So I found that the only thing I could really do to keep her in my life was the punishment didn't work. None of that worked. And so I just always came to her from a standpoint of love and offering help and saying, I really think that in trying to direct her and turn her in a different direction. But things right before her death, we knew something was wrong. She had lost some weight. She looked different. She's acting differently. And so we just thought we have to do something. And we got our entire family together. We were planning an intervention, and we were 3 days away from holding that intervention when she died. And she was alone in her room. She'd never been in trouble with the law. She had no, record to speak of, other than when I had called the law when she was still a juvenile. But she had been using heroin, and the heroin that she used was laced with fentanyl. The heroin wouldn't have killed her. It was enough fentanyl to kill her, enough to kill 6 people. So, the complete devastation that we had when that happened 5 years ago, just a little more than 5 years ago now. I just knew, from that moment on, that I couldn't let another parent go through this. Sadly, we've gone from what the CDC calls overdose, and about 80% of those we know are from fentanyl, but 72,000 a year deaths when my daughter died, to 112,000 in the last 12-month period that we have record of in this nation. So the problem has just gotten worse since this happened to my daughter. No matter how much I feel like I'm shouting from the rooftops and trying to do all these initiatives and everything I can, and now I'm joined by so many other parents who are also working for the same cause because they've lost someone, and other family members. A lot of people have started nonprofits. In the last 5 years, there are so many of us now who are doing this work. And I think I always say it's going to take all of us to turn this ship around, but we're not there yet. And that's kind of it in a nutshell, how Emily's Hope came about and what happened to my daughter. But she was a magnificent artist too.
And I saw her work. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Beautiful work. Let's take a break. When we come back, we want to talk more about Emily. We'll be back in just a moment. We are back talking with Angela. You lost your daughter, Emily, just over 5 years ago to what would have been heroin, but laced with fentanyl was enough to kill 6 people. So she didn't have a heroin overdose. She had heroin in her system that had fentanyl. And one of the things that I read on your website and that you shared and that really stuck with me as I read that and was preparing to talk with you is that you'd scheduled that intervention and then 3 days later she died. So, or 3 days before the intervention, she died. And I think so often the things that we try to do when trying to save someone, whether they're medically compromised from a health condition, whatever it is, we're just wanting the chance to try. Give me that treatment, give me that medicine, give me that chemotherapy, that transplant, that intervention, whatever that looks like. And so I just felt so saddened by the fact that you just were so close with the chance to try. And I wonder what your thoughts about that. You know, you mention it, so I wonder how that sits with you now and what that felt like then.
It just feels like the rug has been swept out from under you because you think you're taking steps and doing what you need to do to get this person help. What I've come to realize is that when Emily was going through that rebellious phase, and then I knew she was smoking weed. I knew that, and I didn't like that and was worried about that. I didn't think that was healthy or good for her, and I was worried about pills. And when I knew all that, and I would talk to someone about it, it was kind of like a dark cloud. When you're something is wrong with your child, it's like a dark cloud just follows you around, or someone, anybody that
They
you
say
love,
you're
right?
only as happy as your most unhappy child.
Yeah, right. I think there's truth to that.
Mhm.
But I would talk to people and they would be like, oh, I had a sister that was a rebel or that experimented with drugs for a while and she's fine now. Or people would tell, like, judges, school principals, everyone was, she comes from a good family. She has a mother and parents who care about her. She'll be fine. She's going to be fine. I mean, but that is not the truth anymore today. I think a lot of people my age, when they were young, drank, experimented with drugs, did stupid things, right? But it wasn't a death sentence. It was not. But today, with the fentanyl in the illicit drug supply, and now the illicit pills, the fake pills that are out there, 7 out of 10 pills have fentanyl in them, according to the DEA. It's just nothing is safe.
You don't get a chance to come back from those mistakes or bad
Right.
choices as a young person or even whatever age you are.
Right. And kids will make stupid mistakes, right? They'll make choices that are not smart. And I just think every kid, but now it's a death sentence if you try something that has fentanyl in it. And chances are, if you didn't get it from a doctor or pharmacy, it is going to have fentanyl in it. So I think we have to, educate everybody in this nation, and we have to take it much more seriously than we're taking it. And I think the reason we don't take it so seriously is because of the stigma associated with drug use. Like, it's a choice, and like substance use disorder, it's a choice that you're making, and people don't understand why people can't just stop. So, and then if they don't die, and if they become addicted to fentanyl, a lot of people are addicted to fentanyl now, and that's just a matter of time before they will die.
Right. That's a ticking time bomb for sure.
Yeah.
In my reading about this over the last days, I think about Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and you'd said how so many of you have rallied now, and you're nowhere near an answer or the change that needs to happen. And I think about Mothers Against Drunk Driving and the young people today who don't know that was an educational piece. I mean, maybe, but I remember at my age, I was hearing a lot about it. I'm 52, so when I was coming up, I was hearing a lot about that. And you just hope that this has the same, but there's still drunk drivers. There's still people who make poor decisions behind the wheel. When you look at the fentanyl crisis and what your rally, the people who are fighting the fight that you're fighting, do you have an idea of what the answer is? Prevention, obviously, education for sure. What is the message that's the most important thing you want to say to people?
Well, it's a complicated issue, right? So the solving it is multifaceted. There are many different areas and many different fronts, and we need to be all working on those fronts. Some have, a specialty maybe working, but we can't arrest our way out of it. We can't arrest everyone in this nation who's going to try a drug or is addicted to drugs or alcohol, right? So we can't do that. But what I believe in, what Emily's Hope, the charity now, we've put so much of our efforts behind. It's not the only thing we do, but we've put so much of our efforts behind is the prevention aspect of it. We have to teach kids when they're younger in age-appropriate ways, not using scare tactics, but how to protect their bodies and their brains. And we have to teach them what substances do to their brains because they're not getting that message. That's a message that DARE really failed to teach, and studies show that, it wasn't effective or as effective as we had hoped it would be. And what we're doing at Emily's Hope is we've developed a K-5 prevention curriculum, and we're now in 4 states in before 5,000 students right now. We piloted it last year. And then we started with the young kids because we want to talk to children and teach them all this information while their parents and their teachers still have more influence on them than their peers and social media. So we think that is, kids want to protect their bodies. They want to protect their brains. And we think that is a key element right there, is starting young. I have an anecdotal story. When Emily was in the 3rd grade, I did a meth special for the TV station I was working for. And we showed the before and after pictures of meth users. This is back when meth was being made in the bottles and it was, in home labs. And that doesn't even happen anymore. It's all coming up from Mexico. But we did this big meth special on how it had ruined lives, how people had died, using meth, different things. And I had Emily in 3rd grade sit down and watch that. It was an adult special really for adults, but it made such an impact on her. She was always anti-meth. In fact, I don't believe she ever used meth, but she never got the full message, right? That all these other substances were harmful to the brain and harmful to your life as well. So I think I've had so many experts come beside me and agree. That's an anecdotal story, but we've done literature reviews, we've done all the research, and I've had so many people come to help develop this curriculum that are, doctors and addictionologists and administrators and teachers. And we all agree that we just have to start young, and it has to continue all the way. And so we started with the young kids, and now we're developing 6 through 12. And that's where my hope lies. That's where it really lies, is the education of people to really understand. And then, of course, we need better ways to treat people who are suffering from substance use disorder. We can't arrest our way out of it. We need better treatment centers. We need to study better methods of treatment. We need more access to medically assisted treatment. I mean, there's so much on that front that needs to change as well.
I really support your effort in the early education, because if you think about, even if you're creating a pathway for students, young children, to want to just keep learning about their body. I think about the podcasts that I listen to that are about health. Huberman Lab, he makes science fun. I listen to his podcast, and I listen to what he says about what alcohol does to the brain. And it makes me think a little differently about the wine I drink or what it is. So it's an ongoing education that starts very young, that changes as we grow up. But it also has to come from a yearning to want to do better for our body, like you're saying, and to learn and yearn for information.
Right. We have an animated series in children's books, so we try to make the curriculum really engaging. And it's something that a lot of school counselors are doing, but teachers can implement it as well in their classrooms. So we have an education portal. We're just trying to get it out there and get it to as many people as possible. There are a few states now requiring this kind of curriculum in their states because the overdose, I put that in quotes, overdose/fentanyl poisoning numbers have been so enormous. But there are not a lot of curriculums that start at this young age. We start in kindergarten with medication versus candy, or who is a trusted adult, those kinds of just basic building blocks that kids need to learn.
Amazing. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll finish up our conversation. We're back with you, Angela. I just want to talk about your podcast for a moment. We have just about 4 minutes left, but I was watching one of the most recent episodes where a young man bought one Xanax and it had fentanyl, and that was it for him.
It's all too common a story. So podcast Grieving Out Loud, I started because I just wanted to start talking about this grief. I wanted to talk about addiction, loss, coping with it. And we're now, I think, 140 episodes or so in. And I've talked to so many parents, so many parents that found their kids dead in their rooms the next morning because they bought a pill off Snapchat, whether that was a Percocet or a Xanax or whatever. So I think it's a really good outlet for us to be able to come together and talk about this. And I've had grief experts, of course, on the podcast. But one thing I have learned is that I will always carry this grief with me. It's kind of like a backpack now that I have, that I will always carry. It's not always as heavy as it was at first, but it will always be there. And I think the society, we're so afraid of grief, and we just want to give people 3 days off work and get back to work and don't talk about it anymore. But I think we need to really allow people to express what they're feeling and to let people know they're not alone, because not wanting to talk about grief can feel so isolating, right?
Mhm. For sure. And one of my friends said once that grief is a room in your house. It's just one you visit less often
Yeah.
as time goes on. You have kind of like I always say, my analogy is that it's like you're in the ocean and sometimes you're fighting against the current and maybe getting even knocked against the rocks. And other times you're on your back floating with the sun in your face and you get a respite from that
Right.
more rigorous time in grief. But it is a wave and it happens for years to come, the rest of our lives. It doesn't go away.
Yeah, at first it felt like a life sentence to me. That's what I thought. Oh my gosh, I might live another 30, 40 years or something, and I have to live with this.
Yeah.
I'm learning how to live with it. And I'm doing that with the help of other people, though. I'm not doing that alone.
And helping others. How much do you feel is part of your healing, this process that you're going through right now, and standing up and being this voice and using the voice that you've had I see your awards behind you, these accolades that you've achieved. Like you said, it's prepared you in some way to do this work.
Right. Helping others helps me the most. It's a place for me to put my grief. It's something constructive for me to do with my grief. And I feel like there is making some meaning out of a meaningless death. Like Emily didn't have to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people call fentanyl poisoning murder. I mean, it is. They chose to do a drug either because they were addicted or they just made a bad choice, but they weren't choosing to die. And so it is just something for me to say, look at, my daughter was an artist, and what can I do with all of this? And this is what I've come up with to do. And it does help me when I hear someone has gone to treatment because of our treatment scholarships. When I talk to kids and they come talk to me afterwards and they tell me that either they've stopped using or they had a parent that they've lost, just knowing that her story is helping others and helping to really make a difference, I think helps me the most.
There's a quote I read just recently, and I can't remember who said it, but it's, when you feel helpless, be helpful.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm. It's good. Well, keep up your extraordinary work. And thank you for taking the time to share Emily's story with us. And I just commend what you're doing. I hope that you feel the reward in what you're doing, and then it brings you peace along the way. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.